Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Comic Source. I'm your host, Jace. You see the big smile on my face. You see the tree behind me. It's not quite Christmas time, but it's never too early to start celebrating. As you all know, I'm a huge fan of Christmas. And we have a wonderful Christmas time project to talk about today. I have the writer, George Northy, joining me. So this is an upcoming Oni book, but it's also being developed for a film, which got announced right before Comic-Con. So George, before we even get into the pitch, why don't you tell us about that news that you got right before Comic-Con about this being optioned and what other medium we're going to see it in?
Yeah, it was really exciting. Basically, I already work in film and TV as a writer, so I already have some contacts. So it was something that we kind of slipped to some producers when we kind of came up with the concept and sold it to Oni. And yeah, basically, I worked with Galen Hurd's company before, so I knew they were kind of looking for stuff in this vein. So I was excited to kind of show them this, and they were flipped out for it. So yeah, it's really early stages. We're gonna really hit the ground running once the book is fully out. But we're excited to develop it, and there's a lot of different ways we could go with it. So it could be animated, it could be live action. There's a lot of places to play with this world, but it feels very cinematic to us, so I'm excited to develop it.
And it's going to be the same story, everybody. So you want to get on the ground floor, and then as George said, it's early days. So as things start to develop, sometimes things change, based on if it's live action or animation and that sort of thing. But really, your focus right now is to get the book out. The first issue comes out in October. It's a fantastic story. I've gotten kind of the story beats of it, kind of the broad strokes. So let everybody know, give them the pitch. How would you describe it to somebody who's not familiar with Yuletide?
So it's basically kind of an adventure in the tradition of kind of like Amblin films from the 80s and 90s. Like it's a bunch of kids in a town called Christmas, Pennsylvania, which is inspired by Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which I'm from Pittsburgh. So we visited Bethlehem, which is like basically a town in Pennsylvania that is like Christmassy all year round because they just kind of took the title and went with it. Basically inspired by this town that is just like all about Christmas, and these kids unwittingly unleash all these like kind of buried Christmas demons and witches and monsters that are kind of like the long hidden secret of Christmas. Like we only see the sanitized happy version, but there are all these dark legends that have been kind of like buried. And so that's kind of the main premise, is like these kids have to face these demons and maybe face some of their own personal demons as they conquer these monsters and get Christmas back on track.
Yeah, and I love these kind of stories. I've had creators on in the past that have kind of explored these Yule myths, if you will, because we talk about Christmas, and certainly in this country, we're relatively young, little 250 years old, or so. When we talk about going back to like the pagan rituals or whatever, thousands of years ago, the winter solstice, shortest day of the year, so the darkness was, long, and especially if you're up north, it was even longer. And so, yeah, it kind of engenders these ideas of monsters and myth and that sort of thing. So mixing it with this, I'll say not even sanitized, but sanitized? Can I put it that way? Sanitized version of Christmas that we have. There's so much more to explore. And then it gets into the idea of why we like, kind of horror films. It makes us feel alive. It makes us explore, our own darkness and that sort of thing. So in reading the treatment, what I was really struck by was, it's cool with, mythical monsters and these kids kind of overcoming obstacles and what have you. But the thing I was struck by was how much heart was in it and the relationships. So that has to be something that's, again, near and dear, and especially with the holidays coming up, we all have family and we like to feel close to the ones we love. So can you talk about, finding that balance between the fun and the action, but also staying true to kind of the emotions of the story?
Yeah, when I was thinking of it, I was thinking of things that I grew up loving, like Hocus Pocus, which is, of course, gets super dark. They talk about, which I thought it was hilarious back in the old days when Disney could have witches who worship Satan on like a kids movie,
right.
They, that the way that kind of combined heart and family, and it really kind of all came together. This idea, I first kind of really got into these monsters when I was doing a Christmas quiz for my in-laws, and I did a round that was on like the forgotten monsters of Christmas. So I just was so into all of them, and I was like, oh, it'd be fun to kind of like put them all in one thing, and they're not all in my book, but it's kind of like take some different ones from different cultures. But yeah, when I really came across the metaphor of like, oh, like Christmas is a time where we all bury our darkest feelings and try to push them all down to have a cheery time. And that's kind of what's been done to these more scary versions of Christmas beasts. So they've been kind of hidden and buried. And what if they suddenly were unleashed? So it kind of became like, I grew up also loving Buffy, and I love that kind of high school as hell metaphor. So I was really like the idea of like your Christmas darkness can come, you bury it, but it could come raging out one day. It was kind of like the fun metaphor to play with. And so that led to a lot of like, oh, like create a cast of like different family members or friends who kind of all have different issues with the kind of, within their lives that they can kind of tackle as they tackle these monsters became kind of the fun idea behind the book.
Yeah, and just so you know, everybody, I will spoil. No Krampus. He's probably the one old school ancient Yule monster that has gotten a lot of attention recently. So I love that you kind of steered into some of the ones that are a little less known.
Exactly. That was kind of the idea when like I was thinking about, I was like, well, Krampus will just take over. Like,
Right,
he's
yeah.
so big. So wanted to kind of maybe save him for maybe a potential sequel. We'll see. But yeah, we wanted to do all the lesser known creatures.
So, talk a little bit about your artistic collaborator and the ideas. I mean, obviously, these are myths that have existed for a long time. You got to find that balance visually of, hey, how scary do we want to make it? How do we want to modernize it, and that sort of thing. Was there a lot of back and forth? Talk to us a little bit about that collaboration.
Absolutely. Rachele Aragno is a great collaborator. I was kind of put with her by Oni. Like they showed me some people, and I immediately gravitated toward her style. I loved the kind of it's dark, but it's also very like young and fun, and I just felt like it was whimsical and could really capture these creatures. They could be both dark and cute, kind of, which I was kind of going for. So yeah, we've gone back and forth, and we've sent a bunch of references back and forth, and really wanted to go for this kind of like ancient. These are ancient creatures from before, like recorded history. So they kind of represent. They're not at one specific time period, and I was really leaning into like to speak to like if we ever do get the chance to do a live action version. Like I was very into like the idea of like kind of leaning into like the 90s and 80s Jim Henson like darker stuff like the Dark Crystal and Labyrinth, those kind of ideas, like to kind of really play with that idea of like I like how those creatures could be kind of ugly and scary, but also kind of like endearing, So that's kind of what we went for with the designs.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the characters that are in the book, everybody. But before we do that, I want to remind you about how important it is to pre-order. So you have a little time, but don't wait. You have until August 30th. That's the final order cutoff for Yuletide. Now's the time to let your retailer know. The more your retailer hears about, hey, I got a lot of people asking about this Yuletide book, I better order some copies, maybe even a few extras to go on the shelves. So actually, I'm sorry, I just misspoke. The final order cutoff is September 22nd. So again, a little bit of time, but don't wait. Let your retailer know. It's the best way you can help out George and his team. Let people know. And I'll be talking about this book, and certainly when it comes out, we'll be reviewing it. So again, pre-order, pre-order, pre-order. That's the watchword of the day. But I mentioned some of the characters. Jake, a 12-year-old boy, as kind of the main character, and then his friends, his sister, his family, and various other townsfolk. Was there anybody that you kind of struggled to find their voice? And I also wonder, with such a big cast, was that planned from the beginning, or did you start with one particular character? Maybe it was Jake, maybe it was somebody else, and then the cast kind of grew around them.
Yeah, I mean, I really wanted to kind of do kind of in that kind of Amblin style, like, and even like things like Stranger Things that are obviously riffs on that Amblin style as well. Like you kind of do like the younger kids and the slightly more teen kids as like two kind of different groups. That was kind of really what I was going for. Hocus Pocus does something similar, and like the Goonies kind of has that kind of those different kind of age groups. So I really wanted to kind of represent that in my like core kid characters, and yeah, they kind of just kind of came to what I was thinking. And when I pitched it to Oni at first, they were like, oh, this is a lot of characters, but then they saw the story and they were like, but it kind of works, so let's just keep it as it is, like don't cut anyone. And I was like, okay, great. And then yeah, with the big cast of monsters as well, like I really wanted to kind of like this is the one shot to do all these Christmas creatures. I wanted to do as many as we could.
Yeah, do we know how many issues it's going to be?
It's 3, yes.
3 issues. Okay.
When I talked to them, it was really about like let's start in October and kind of have it kind of ramp into Christmas, so we can really like take advantage of that kind of that fun like between Halloween and Christmas period where
Yeah.
everything's kind of spooky and Christmas and cheery are kind of merging together.
Yeah, 100%. So again, everybody, final order cutoff November 22nd, on sale in October. Don't have an exact date yet, but again, when I know, I'll let everybody. When it comes to again, getting back to this idea of collaboration, putting it in comic form first, you coming from the kind of the TV and film world, I wonder about pacing, because that's always one of the, I think, the hardest things to get right, and it is something that's so different between kind of live action or animation and comics. I hear this from people that cross over all the time. You can't just have a panel where somebody's just kind of reaction. There's always got to be the beat. So was that something that you were conscious of, like, hey, I got to make sure to kind of keep things moving? You do have limited real estate on the comic page.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was like a lot of trying to figure out how to compress it and to learn about the kind of the page turn aspect that is something very new to me. So that was really interesting and I definitely wanted to pack in as much as I could, to like really have these like be kind of dense stories. Obviously I love like more slow paced comics and I read a lot of those, but as this is my first shot, I want to be like everyone should get their money's worth. We're trying to put as much as we can into every page. And all as much story as we can. But yeah, it's been an interesting process, and I luckily after I sold this book to Oni, they asked me if I had a pitch for their last Shiver Suspense Stories issue that came out, and it was actually a really good warm up because it was a really short timeline, so I was able to kind of like do that script really fast and kind of learn about that process and give notes to the artists and the colorist and the letterer. So that was kind of like an amazingly perfect like education in how this process works. We're just starting with 8 pages and then move into Yuletide, which was actually kind of awesome. That was a process I could be a part of.
Yeah, and where are you in the process of writing? Have you I obviously probably have it all outlined, but have you scripted it all? Where are you?
Yeah, the 3 issues are scripted, so they're with Rachele, my amazing collaborator, and yeah, she's illustrating, and we're doing colors, getting some letters in, so hopefully, I mean, yeah, we're on schedule, so we'll be good.
Fantastic. Well, I can't wait to check it out. Like I said, everybody, final order cutoff on November 22nd. Make sure you order before then, and it's going to be out in October. Let's talk a little bit more. We talked about the characters. We talked about the setting. I want to talk kind of overall about the tone and the mood, because we talked about that balance, right, between the fun, adventure, Ablin kind of stuff, and these scary monsters. But when it comes to kind of the world that you've come from, film and TV, so much of mood and kind of setting the audience up, it comes from the music, from the sound, and in comics, obviously you don't necessarily have that. So any particular music that you listen to kind of get you in the mood, and is there anything that you would maybe suggest that people listen to while they're reading it?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not really sure. Like, I definitely listened to the Nightmare Before Christmas soundtrack to kind of like get that spooky meets Christmas energy going. I think those kind of things, that kind of tone is very, maybe like a little Tim Burton Batman Returns soundtrack could be good. But Danny Elfman, anything Danny Elfman maybe. But yeah, and I like to write to soundtracks. I really love the Knives Out soundtracks. Those are really good to write to, especially if you're doing something fun and like kind of mystery vibes. Those are really good. So yeah, I think those kind of things, and then yeah, anything that kind of gives a little spookiness and a little Christmas would be perfect.
Fantastic. Well, I always kind of compare the colors in comics to kind of the soundtrack, and I've had some creators that agree with me and some that don't, because I feel like colors kind of sets the mood and the tone and the emotion, kind of like music does. But I've had other creators that
I think that's very true. And when I got the colors in for the first issue, I think it really, you're like, oh, now it, as you said, it like makes it sing. Like you're like, oh, this is really getting the mood and the tone perfect. Yeah.
Well, the other thing that I hear a lot from creators, and this is so appropriate for your book, especially because this is kind of the first series that you're doing, is that when the art comes in, they always compare it to Christmas morning when they're opening up. Have you found that experience? Like when those first few pages started coming in for the issues, and you're seeing your story brought to life, you're like, oh, it's like opening a present each time.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's the different processes and like I've now working with I've done the Shiver Suspense stories and this story and kind of seeing the different processes of how artists work differently and how like the layouts can be really detailed or not detailed at all, a little more like sketchy and you kind of and then you see the finished work and yeah, it's really cool. It's just like an amazing process and it's really nice. It's like working in TV and film, you don't have a lot of as much control and here you can really like tell the story you want to tell and you really kind of like they're asking you all the questions you wish the executives in TV and film would be asking you, like what color should this be and all that stuff. So that's really, really nice. And it's very fun and it makes you feel really like you're creating something that is yours.
Right. Yeah. You've got your hands wrapped around it. Well, you probably don't even have a great answer for this because again, it just kind of speaks to the way film and TV works. But I know the audience will be upset if I don't ask it. Where are we in terms of a live action or animated? I mean, do we have any ETA? Would it be coming next year, the year after? And you may not know. That's just kind of the nature of the way things are.
Oh yeah, not sure on that. I think the process next would be, we have a producer. And so it would be like taking it out to studios and trying to get like a partner to work with it on. And yeah, I would be writing the screenplay myself. So it would be at least the first draft, until they fire me or whatever. Yeah, so that will I think that process will kick off a little bit closer to the release of the third issue when the whole story could be read and we could kind of send it around to different studios and producers. And I'll probably do a pitch that will try to get this thing, into theaters and hopefully, hopefully after that it could maybe move fast and, who knows how long these things take a long time.
I love obviously I've been doing this for 14 years. Obviously I love comics, but man, when I was reading your treatment, I was like, I really want to see this on the big screen. And I don't necessarily have a preference, live action or animated. I just want to see it because I think it's a fantastic story. Cool. But we'll finish with this, George. You've been so generous with your time, but if you had kind of a dream casting for Jake, would you have somebody in mind?
I think that's tricky because, especially with a character that young, the person who's going to end up being that part is probably not on my radar in any way, shape, or form. Their last names are the last name of my sister and brother-in-law, so the Valverdes. So I'm not sure. I think that kid is probably out there, but I'm not aware of who they are at the moment. But someone really, Perchta is kind of like the lead villain, and she's this kind of fun, over the top Christmas witch, and I think there's so many ways you could go with that. Lots of really big, fun scenery chewing stars could do that. Everyone from Charlize Theron to Angelina Jolie to more comedic actresses like Kate McKinnon could all do different takes on it. I think that could be really fun.
That's funny that you mentioned Charlize Theron because that was who came to mind, especially because of the journey she goes on. That was who came to mind for me. So that's interesting. And everybody, for checking us out on YouTube, she's the one that's on the cover of the book, obviously. So. Well, anyway, George, thanks so much for joining. I can't wait to read the book. Fingers crossed. Hopefully I'll be able to see it on the big screen someday. Really appreciate the time. Is there anything else you want to share with our audience? Maybe somewhere you're active on social media if people want to follow your work?
Yeah, I'm George. I think I'm just George Northy on pretty much all the social medias, so you can find me pretty easily. And yeah, I've definitely, hopefully we'll be announcing some more comic stuff, probably next year, but we'll see. But yeah, very excited to keep in this world because it's been really creatively fulfilling. It's actually where I said when I used to work in advertising and then I wanted to do something more creative and I actually really wanted to be a comic book writer and I was taking classes and trying to get my own comics off the ground and then I kind of fell into the screenwriting world, and so I've been doing that for the past 12 years and then I kind of have been back into comics after all this time. It kind of feels like coming full circle, so it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, well, I mean, the one thing I hear from a lot of people that have been in both worlds is what they love about comics is you get an idea for a comic, and within 2 or 3 months, you have like it's out there for people, as opposed to, as we were mentioning, film and TV, it just takes so long.
Yeah.
And so many more kind of hands in the pot. So we'll love to have you back on to talk about other comic work as it comes up in the future.
Cool. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Yeah, and to everybody out in the audience, again, one more reminder, final order cutoff, September 22nd, books coming in October, and as I said, I'm sure we'll be reviewing it. So I'll put links to George's social media, a couple of them in the show notes, so if you're having trouble finding them, you can go there. We appreciate you joining as always, everyone, and we'll talk to you next time.